Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Charlton Live, sponsored by the British Institute of Kitchen, Bedroom and Bathroom Installation. My name is Louis Mendes. On this week's show, we will, of course, be looking ahead to Saturday's trip to Stevenage in what will be Michael Appleton's first game as the Addicks head coach. Plenty more stuff to come as well, which I'll tell you about in a minute, but let's introduce everyone on the screen. Top right, Nathan Miller. How you doing, Nath?
Not bad, mate. Living the dream, as always. Yourself?
Yeah, not too bad. Looking forward to the start of the latest new era. As we make the travel to the Lamex on Saturday. And bottom of the screen there, the First Lady of Charlton Live, Sue Gallop. How you doing, Sue?
I'm very well, thank you, lads. Very well. Looking forward to the show.
Excellent stuff. Yeah, everyone's in great spirits. Well, how's that? It's because it's been a nice sunny day, I guess, here in South London. Right, on tonight's show, then, we've actually got a really packed pod. So Michael Appleton did his first pre-match press conference since becoming the Addicks head coach today. So we're going to delve into that a few times, hear how he settled in to his surroundings in SE7. We'll hear his thoughts ahead of the game with Stevenage as well. We've got a special guest. Yesterday, I sat down and spoke with George Elek from the Not the Top 20 podcast, one of the EFL experts out there. He knows everything about the EFL and the lower divisions, but also an Oxford United fan as well. So I thought he could give us a little bit more insight into our new head coach, having seen him operating probably near enough at his best when he won that promotion with Oxford a few years ago. So we're going to hear from him. We're also going to hear from a Stevenage fan, Ben Adshead from the Boro Pod, is going to tell us all about Steve Evans' side as we look ahead to that game with Stevenage on Saturday. Good evening to everyone joining us live in the YouTube chat as well. I can see John, Lawrence, Michael's in there, Joe's in there, Mr. Curly Whirly, Sam, all hell let loose. And is that Lynn in there as well? Good evening to all of you. Thanks for joining us. Get your comments in as we go through the show. You can also email us, studio@charltonlive.co.uk, or you can tweet us at @charltonlive. Let us know what you've made of the arrival of Michael Appleton. If you haven't had your say yet, let us know what changes you hope he'll bring to the side for Saturday and how he may improve us in that short space of time. Before we hear from Michael Appleton, Nathan, how are you feeling about the last week? We've had a bit of a few days off now with the international break, which was a welcome relief to all of us, and probably to Mr. Apples himself, of course, because he's had a bit of time to have a look at the side. Now, you weren't about for our emergency pod when Michael was announced, Nave. So how are you feeling about his arrival as head coach in SE7?
Yeah, not bad. I mean, obviously, when we was talking about it, really, we were just trying to figure out who it would be. Obviously, I must admit, I listened to his press conference today, which we obviously listened later, and there were certain bits I actually sort of liked. So yeah, I'm probably like most people, just see how it goes, and at the end of the day, if we start winning games, it doesn't matter if you've got, Boris Johnson in charge. That's the main thing, is we should start winning games. Be interesting to see if we get someone with a last name of Pears as his assistant. That'd be quite funny, apples and pears, but we can all hope. But listen, I just want us to see win games and just write the season off so far. That's happened. We can't change it now. So hopefully just win some games, get back on a positivity train, and then we can enjoy the rest of the season, hopefully.
Excellent stuff. Well, as I said, Michael Appleton, he's been with us for 6 days now, so I'm expecting big results already. I like my managers to work fast, but he sat down for his press day today. Terry asked the new head coach how he settled in.
You've had your first week pretty much at the club. How's it gone? Was it a positive that you didn't have to play on a Saturday in between?
I'll tell you after the game on Saturday. No, I think in terms of being able to get sort of the simple messages into the players, what you want, I think it's always a bonus to have a little bit more time on the grass. So, I think that helps. Obviously, the downside that is that you've got to fix games in which come thick and fast, and I'm sure October will be a very, very busy month for a lot of clubs up and down the country.
You join us six league games into the season, with us sitting in 17th on 6 points, 2 cup defeats as well. So a tough start, obviously. Has it been a case of you analysing what's gone before to see what needs changing, or is it a clean slate, forget what happened before and we'll just go from here?
Well, I think it's a clean slate for players. I think that's important. It's important that they know they've all got a fighting chance, because you want that competitive edge in training, and that's something I've really tried to implement already. The intensity and taking nothing for granted. Everything has to mean something, whether it's a possession, a small-sided game. But it'll be really foolish of me not to obviously have a look what's happened in the first games of the season, to highlight what can be better, should be better, and try and affect that in some way.
Yeah, with that in mind, Charlton fans have witnessed this season especially, but also in previous seasons actually, we've had some good exciting football at times with some exciting players, but mixed with some frailties, and have cost us victories or draws in games. It seems a difficult issue to put right. I mean, how do you go about trying to change that?
Well, I mean, I mentioned the word messages. I think messages have to be simple. Players have got to understand what you want. It can't be too complicated too early. I think being harder to beat, most teams are always looking for that formula, whether it, going on a good run, a bad run, indifferent run, whatever it may be. But the obvious reality to everything is that we have got an attack-minded group, they're a young group. But if I can implement a little bit of discipline within it, recognising when it is a good time to counter-attack, when it's a good time to break forward, when it's a good time to create overloads in certain areas, and then almost getting them in a position where they know that, ultimately, if you goal up with 10 minutes to go or going into injury time, not going to get that second goal's, quite as important as it probably was, early on in the game. So, if we can improve in 2 or 3% in certain aspects of the game, then I think we'll be fine. But I don't want to detract away what this group's really, really good at as well. I think it's important to highlight and improve what they can be better at. But certainly, I'm not going to be putting the reins on them too much when we got the opportunity to play.
I know you've only been at the club a short time, relatively short time. It's probably been really chaotic, and some of the questions you probably won't be able to answer. And I think you'd already touched earlier on in the week about the injury situation. Is there any further update on that? Because obviously we've got Panish Kamara, we've got Scott Fraser and Tuxanika.
Yeah, I think we've got. We're certainly getting closer with Chucks, and that's a positive thing. We've got 1 or 2 doubts on a couple of players that are probably 50-50 to be involved at the weekend, and obviously tomorrow will give us a better indication on that. But it is part of the game. It is, it comes with the territory. You'd like to think over a period of time coming up, we'll have more influential players on the pitch and available with the likes of the players that you've already mentioned, which will improve the group, make us stronger, make us more resolute. I think it's one of them where it's important to recognise what's missing. But as a new coach coming in, I have to give all my time and efforts to the lads that are fit and available.
And our 3 international players that were away on international duty all had positive weeks away. Have they come back unscathed? Yeah,
they have, fortunately. Yeah. So they've come back and in a good bill of health. So and they've had positive. They've all had a reasonably positive weeks, really. So it was good to meet them. This morning is the first time I've met them since I come in.
And again, it's been chaotic. You're only a week in, but your coaching staff, are you any closer to? Yeah,
I certainly expect one to be in the dugout with me come Saturday. Don't want to kill it, so just in case. But I'm pretty confident one will be in the dugout with me come Saturday with Jason, and then obviously we'll take it from there after that.
There we go. That's Michael Appleton speaking to Terry during press day earlier today. Interesting. Obviously, he mentioned he thinks there might be a new assistant or someone in the dugout with him by Saturday. I mean, David Kerslake and Richard O'Donnell, his assistants in his last couple of jobs. So the assumption is will be one of those. Also, if anyone noticed there, he said with me and Jason. So didn't mention Anthony Hayes. So no comment from the club yet. But that's just certainly something I picked up on when listening to the press conference earlier on today. But yeah, he's got his feet under the table now, Sue. It'd be interesting to see how much he has been able to attack some of the deficiencies of the side in the first few days that he's been here. Now, his press conference today was 18 minutes long, so there are other talking points that come up. One of which was, about whether he's been asked whether he's been said you have to make the playoffs if he's been set that target. Now, he says no, but obviously Andy Scott has spoken today about that still being the target. Is that how we'll judge him this season? He's come in only 6 games in. Obviously, it's not been a particularly strong 6 games from us, but statistically and points-wise, we can still make the playoffs. There's still plenty of football to play. So is that Is that the target we're setting him?
I think obviously our fan base, even in the summer, and when Dino was about, I think we'd all kind of got our hearts set on at least playoffs. And I think there's no reason why we can't. But he's literally got to hit the ground running, hasn't he, from Saturday? I think it must be a bit tricky for him because he's coming after the transfer window had closed. So all of the players that he's got in are players that he's sort of kind of got no choice over. So again, I think it'd be interesting to see what happens in the January window. But I would say that the fan base will still be expecting at least playoffs. Yes, I just think we've been in this league for far too long now, and we have got some fantastic players. And if we can get them playing the right way, which we're hoping Michael will get them doing, then there's no reason why we can't do it.
Yeah. Nathan, when you're the new manager coming into this side, you'll look around at what's gone on before. How would you have sort of attacked this week in terms of he's spoken about keeping the messages simple and clear? Stop giving away silly goals, I guess would be message one.
Yeah, exactly. I think we all knew there were certain facets of the games that we've played already where there were a lot of individual errors, which, you can try and coach, but if someone makes this mistake, you can do your training all week. And if someone just does something stupid in the first minute of a game, then, it's an uphill battle after that. But I think there's certain, he mentioned the word discipline in there, which is quite a good point. I think like that Oxford game where we were a bit gung-ho in that second half, when probably, we probably should have said we'll just take a point. Like we've not been at our best after that first half anyway. So I just think he's got to find that right balance of being disciplined, but not putting too much discipline in to the extent of that he's stopping the attacking players or the players with a lot of flair doing what they're good at. So for example, I can't see him playing a 4-4-2 and we just sit behind the ball all game because we haven't got the players to do it. So I don't think it's that. I just think it's the games he's seen, he's probably seen where we've given up possession with and without the ball. As Jason said, post-match against Crawley, we've been doing both of them. So trying to keep it simple, trying to be cuter in how we play. Game management probably would be one. But as he said, just basic messages, basic principles, and trying to keep it simple and don't overcomplicate it because we've got a young squad. We all know that. So, and we're going to make mistakes, but we try and reduce mistakes with our defensive position, which is going to be one. So, but like I said, at the same time, give it to the players that are going to make a difference so we can try and have a threat in the other end as well when we ain't playing for 0-0s every week, which I'm sure he'll be doing.
James said that with such an open league this year, yes, the start has been poor and slow, but a lot to play for, and he should set that target. And he also added something was going wrong on the training ground. Happy to see Appleton and hopefully new staff on the way as well. Jim saying the playoffs is the minimum I expect from the board and not from the manager. And as I said, obviously Andy Scott's he's spoken to Radio London earlier on this evening as well. If you've had a chance to listen to that after you listen to this, you'll understand he's spoken about obviously the mentality of the club. It's been a losing club for too long, and that's something we need to change. Has the transfer window given us the best possible opportunity to do that, I guess, is the question, Sue. And that'll be what they're judged on now this year. There's been a lot of talk this week. Charlie Mevin was on a podcast as well, speaking about the salary management protocol, the cap and that, exactly how Charlton sort of fit within that and how he says we've gone slightly over it. Obviously, there were ways around it, which we've spoken about in the past and decided not to do. So the way the club has decided to run themselves is obviously you could argue it's not giving themselves the best chance of getting out of the division this year, and that will be, like I say, the way they're judged at the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about the transfer window just before it closed, didn't we? And then we talked about it again when we did the emergency show when Michael was unveiled, because I think we were all quite worried about that window, and actually there was not a lot of activity for quite a period of time, and then it was all like a last minute kind of, what did we get, like 4 in on the last day or something. So I think it's always going to be difficult, because then those players are that little bit more behind the rest of the squad that you've had for some of pre-season, all of pre-season. So then you've got now a new manager. So we've got that added on top, that then I guess it's like, yeah, we want to, like I've said, we want to hit the ground running Saturday. We want to win Saturday, but at the same time, I think we need to be patient with Michael, because he has only had a week with this squad. Some of the squad is still a new squad to the club, let alone then having a new manager coming in. So I think his strength, obviously, we've talked about in the past about his strength with younger players and bringing through younger players. We've already got that in place, and those younger players, a lot of them had sort of played last season. So I feel like there's no reason why we shouldn't kind of have a really positive start. But yeah, what you said earlier is key in terms of his support staff, his backroom staff. What does that look like? And I think it's not just about the squad and how we strengthened in the window. It's about the people that Michael's got around him as well.
Yeah, and I mean, Stuart says we're not too far yet. It is retrievable. I mean, I'll just flash something up on the screen for those watching on YouTube. You know, just a rough idea of how many games we have left. There's 40 games left. You know, if you go at about a 50% win rate, you're probably likely to get in the playoffs if you only lose like 11 out of your 40. So there is definitely still possible. It's way too early to be looking at these scenarios, really. But just to flash up some numbers, even if we were to win 18, draw 15, draw 7, that's 75 points total added on to the 6 we've got. That would get you into the playoffs probably. So that's what I'm just saying. It's still achievable currently. You know, there is only 6 games gone so far. And like we say, that's the gauntlet being set down to Michael Appleton, even if they haven't said it directly to him. That's what Andy Scott said this evening, that the promotion is still the aim. Dudley's saying just stop making stupid mistakes would be a good start. Whatever happened to the no dickheads policy? Well, I don't know if that's been retired now that Dean's gone, but hopefully it's sort of one that the club will try and live by. Anyway, Stuart's saying hopefully Appleton will have more defensive know-how, and we'll see that. We're going to hear from George Elek in a few moments' time to learn a little bit more about the new boss, the new head coach, Michael Appleton, who did win promotion with Oxford United. So we're going to hear from him shortly. He obviously had some bad times as well. Blackpool, notably, his last job didn't go that great. Hannah's saying it's always been the case that some managers just work for some clubs despite them failing at previous clubs. So time will tell if he's a good fit for us. I mean, what we do know, Nath, is he's here. He'll get a great reception at the Lamex from the travelling fans on Saturday. You know, we know that the fans will support him. They'll hopefully give him everything he needs. We know the fans will. Hopefully the board have as well. So they will back him. That's the important thing at the start of his tenure now that he's here.
Yeah, of course. And we've done the same when Dean came in. You know, the fans are, you know, they'll always turn up home and away and, you know, give support to the team. Yeah, there might be instances where some people aren't happy and want to boo. That's down to them. But nothing's going to be different. He's not going to get a bad reception. As you say, we're going to try go in there in numbers, selling it out. It's going to be a good atmosphere. Stevenage is very, very good at home. And, yeah, we'll get behind the chaps. And, I mean, yeah, we want to win. But if we don't win, it's not going to be all doom and gloom again. Of course, we all want to win games. But, yeah, it's I think a lot of people are starting to know what sort of situation we're in now. We're not that. Someone said that just now. I can't remember the name. Sorry for that. But that we're not too far away. I mean, if you think about it, I'm not clutching here, but you take Fraser and Pan out of any team. You know, I know we've still got Dobbo. But you take them two out, they're quite influential players. We can't beat around the bush and go, "Oh no, they're not," because they are. Right? As sad as it is. But that said, we should still have got more points on the board with the squad that we have got in the games that we've played, without a doubt. So I think, yeah, he's gonna get time. Of course he is, and no one's gonna start moaning and stuff. But ultimately, you're going to get judged on results, what any single manager is, and you've got to aim for the playoffs. Andy Scott can't come out and go, "Oh yeah, we're aiming for 12th." You know, he ain't going to say that. He can't. It'd be impossible for him to just say that. Well, hell if freeze over and everything go crazy, and rightly so. So he's got to aim for the high, and we'll just see where we go. But we've got to focus on winning games first one Saturday.
Excellent stuff. Well, a couple of messages came in as well from Live Life to the Full. Says, can't see what Appleton has got that Holden didn't have. Squad's the same meat, just a different gravy. Sorry, guys, mid-table finish is all we can do. Appleton's honeymoon period won't last long. This squad is just average. Well, let's hear from someone who knows Michael Appleton perhaps a little bit better than all of us. Now, George Elek from the Not the Top 20 pod. You would have seen him on TV quite a lot. They were on Sky Sports quite a bit over the last few seasons. On Quest highlights of the EFL as well. And I'm sure you would have listened to Not the Top 20. They are the experts on all things EFL. But George is also a Oxford United fan as well. So I spoke to him yesterday just to learn a little bit more about our new head coach. Right, well, we're delighted to say now that George Elek from the Not the Top 20 podcast joins us now. And George, not only are you an expert on all things EFL, but also an Oxford United fan as well. So we thought we'd come to you just to get a little bit more insight on Michael Appleton, because I guess you'd say Oxford United is the club where he had his most success.
Yeah, definitely over a period of time. Like, I would probably argue that the job he did in the one season at Lincoln, where he took them to the playoff final and won it up at Wembley in League One, was maybe the most impressive singular season over performance. But there's no denying that he came in at Oxford at a time where we were in League Two. We weren't in great shape. We just finished kind of mid-table, lower mid-table. We underwent a takeover in the summer that meant that we did no recruitment until I think it was kind of early July. So he came into a threadbare squad and things didn't get off to a great start. But you know, when you consider where Oxford was when he left, about 4 or 5 seasons later, at the top end of, well, just outside the playoffs in League One, that was basically due to him. So it's interesting because he's had such a, I guess, a strange managerial career where he's managed a lot of clubs and with not that much success. But and having interviewed him as well, I think he would agree. Like, a lot of that has come down to the clubs that he's been at and some factors where, for example, if you look at the job he did at Pompey, if you're a Charlton fan and you're seeing Michael Appleton, so you're going on his Wikipedia page and you're looking at the Pompey stuff and you're looking at his win percentage and the rest of it, you might think, well, he didn't do very well there. But actually, he was kind of adored by Pompey fans. It was a time where they were going into administration. He couldn't really do anything in the transfer market, and he was a rookie manager who kind of got them performing at a level they probably weren't expected to. So, yeah, I mean, as an Oxford fan, I'm a huge fan. I do think this is a big job for him, because if he gets this wrong at a League One club, then it's probably unlikely he's going to get the opportunity to get a club of this size again without building up from beneath. But on the flip side of that, say Lincoln had won at Wembley against Blackpool and he'd taken Lincoln to the Championship, his next job, possibly even that summer, might have been a top-end Championship club. And that was the way it looked like his career was going for a while.
It's interesting. Obviously, you make the point about ownerships in the background that play a big part in that. And I think that's certainly something that Charlton fans have learned over the last few years, that it isn't always only the manager. And we've been through enough of them to find out that we haven't quite got the right one. I mean, so what was it that did click at Oxford United that you hope he might be able to transfer to the Valley?
It was basically as soon as we got to January and he could bring his own players in. I remember Kimar Roof came in on loan, who was a player that Michael knew from the academy at West Brom at his time there. I remember actually seeing Roof's debut in a game where I thought, like, who is this guy? He's not up to it at all. And then he ended up being probably one of Oxford's greatest players in recent history. And that's been a constant, I would say, of Appleton's tenure. Like, he is a very, he's a coach first. He's a very good coach. And I think that's kind of the crucial part of his management. But the recruitment of clubs under him, and it certainly isn't just him. There's a recruitment team at Oxford that did well. But, he's quite clearly someone who is able to not only identify good young talent, but develop that talent. And there's no doubt that his reputation within football, so therefore Premier League clubs, for example, look to send their players out on loan to him. And that's been a constant throughout his time at Oxford, at Lincoln, and even at Blackpool, where, Morgan Rogers came in about a week before he was sacked, which was a bit of a shame for Michael, and Lewis Fiorini, another one. So a manager at Manchester City likes sending players to, and plenty of others in the Premier League. So the recruitment was important. The squad wasn't very good when he took over, and given time to, I guess, implement his ideas. And interestingly, I would say that the style of football at Oxford was fairly, it was possession based attacking football. At Lincoln, because he maybe had players that weren't necessarily across the side more technically gifted than their opposition, it was a little bit less possession based. It was still fairly attacking. It was more about getting players like Brendan Johnson and Morgan Rogers on the ball in advanced areas, and that seemed to work well. So I'd say he's fairly flexible. I've seen that he said already that he doesn't want possession for possession's sake at Charlton, but he wants you to have more of the ball than the opposition. I think that's the kind of style that suits him.
Yeah, and being the club we are in League One, I guess that's a sort of style we'd sort of expect. Can he drill a defence? Because that's obviously been our big problem over the last 2 or 3 seasons, really. And it's, I think, partly what cost Dean Holden his job this year is that we were fine. We've been okay going forward. Maybe not quite taken enough chances compared to the amount created, but defensively we've had issues, and that was the same under Dean last season, the same under Ben Garner at the start of last season as well. So is that something that Michael can consider himself an expert at?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, in a way, I think it's developing a successful side rather than a defensive unit. I think as most teams that get promoted out of any league will show, like a good defensive record can be based upon basically dominating games and having the better chances in that facet. Like, I wouldn't anticipate he's going to suddenly get Charlton to play a low block and start looking to grind out clean sheets. Like the way he'll look to do that, I'd have thought would be to have a solid foundation upon which to start the possession-based attacks. But yeah, in both over his time at Oxford and at Lincoln in the successful season, there was certainly a good defensive base that was built upon. And because he's a coach with a lot of experience, like, he's going to come in and he's going to know immediately that is the thing that he needs to sort out. I was obviously watching the Oxford Charlton game that caused Dean Holden to be sacked, and rather than in the second half, especially, like when Charlton stopped basically defending quite deep and started committing men forward, that was where you had more joy. It was then when you committed 9 men forward with a minute 2 left to go in the game, 1-1 away from home, that was a bit of naivety where you got to say, hold on, maybe we should be looking to hold on to a point here rather than letting a team who've scored so many goals in transition kind of break and score a last minute goal to win it.
Yeah, and I think you guys might have mentioned it on your pod as well. Actually, I think we wonder how much Dean knew that he needed a result that day that maybe played a part in that as well. I mean, as I mentioned at the top, you are the EFL expert, so most people, they're always saying football, you're only as good as your last result, and I guess a manager is considered by some to only be as good as his last job. So why did it go wrong with Blackpool last season, do you think?
I think I always say on our pod, if I was an agent for managers, I would basically not even entertain any job with a kind of bottom 6 budget in the Championship. Like, if you think of the Championship as a league, the disparity between the clubs of parachute payments and the likes of Blackpool, for example, or this season, Plymouth, Argyle, or Rotherham, it's absolutely massive. And yet, when you start the season, there isn't a single fan base who anticipate that they are going to be a team that gets relegated. Like, if you talk to the most pessimistic fan, they'll be like, yeah, it's going to be a nightmare. Squad isn't good enough. The manager's rubbish. 17th. And you're like, well, hold on, someone's got to finish below 17th there. Otherwise, so you're kind of almost destined to fail. And especially with Appleton, who took over from Neil Critchley, who had done like a 10 out of 10 job. He'd taken them up. He'd taken them miles clear of safety. It was always going to be difficult to build on that. I think Critchley kind of cashed in his chips when he at the right time. But then when you also consider that Josh Bowler, by far their best player in that season before, was sold on deadline day without a replacement. Like, I mean, if you're Michael Appleton, you're sitting there thinking, well, what's happened here? And then they brought in a whole host of players at the beginning of January that, Michael Appleton thought he was part of the process doing that. And then he was sat before he could do anything with them. So, I guess it might sound like making excuses to those people listening to this who've already made up their mind, but teams have to go down. And I would say that the circumstances around Blackpool being in the relegation zone, there were far more reasons for that than Appleton. I'm by no means saying he did a good job. Like, quite clearly things weren't working. And even though Mick McCarthy couldn't get any better tune out of the players, like I don't think anyone would begrudge the reasons for sacking him. But at the same time, I don't think you can point the finger and say, he took over and made them worse.
And just finally, then again, it's interesting to get an outside perspective on how you guys think Charlton can fare this season. I think it would be fair to say we're lower than we should be based with the squad that we have. But do we have a squad that's capable of challenging in your eyes?
Yeah, I definitely thought so before the season started. It's been, I guess, a bit surprising to see just how many academy grads are lining up in the starting lineup to start the season. That might change as certain players get to full fitness. Players that certainly Panuccio Kamara looks like one where who knows when he's going to be able to play regularly. But even players like Tayo Eden and Terry Taylor seemingly haven't been able to start many games yet. But I do, I was surprised when I was engaging with quite a lot of your fans on Twitter over the weekend. I was amazed just how many seem to think the squad is bad. Because if you look at, and that there's no money being invested. Like if you look at the recruitment over the summer, particularly Alfie May, Lloyd Jones, Panuccio Kamara, even Tanai Watson, Terry Taylor, like these are not players that would be accessible for the majority of League One sides. And I can guarantee that all of them would have had other suitors within the league as well. So there is a strong, I would say, recruitment process going on. It's obviously the first window that Andy Scott's been in charge. And the good thing about Appleton as well is that he's worked closely with recruitment teams in the past. So there shouldn't be any kind of power struggle to do that. But as I say, there's still, and I think a big part of the job that he's going to have to do is developing these young players, because right now, even though there might be massive talents, there are going to be question marks as to whether or not they're ready for this at the moment.
Thinking about a new kitchen or bathroom? Find professional, independent local installers with free home surveys, itemised quotes and protected payments, trading standards approved contracts, and workmanship warranties. The British Institute of Kitchen, Bedroom, Bathroom Installations accredits installers to ensure they are police checked, fully insured, and experienced. Take the risk out of home improvement. Visit bikbbi.org.uk.
Hello fellow addicts, I'm so excited to tell you all about our micropub, the River Ale House. The River Ale House is based in East Greenwich. It has 6 Pub of the Year awards, an ever-changing selection of amazing beer. It's owned by Charlton fans, walkable to the ground in just 20 minutes with buses that go direct to the Valley too. If your matchday routine includes a drink with your friends, you must join your fellow addicts in the River. See you soon.
Right, welcome back to Charlton Live. This is the big match preview. Just before the break there, we heard from the excellent George Elek from Not the Top 20 pod, giving us a lowdown on Michael Appleton, who obviously he saw working close up as an Oxford United fan, but also as someone who understands the EFL really well. He gave us a bit of an insight on why he thinks it's worked for him and perhaps not elsewhere as well. That was really, really interesting, Nath, I thought. All hell let loose pointing. Louis never worked with animals or babies. Yeah, so anyone who's watching on YouTube, basically my daughter kept popping up and stealing my microphone during that because my wife was supposed to be home, but she wasn't quite home from work yet. So yeah, it was very funny. But the consummate professional that George is, he managed to ignore that and continue speaking. Which was really good. Robert says the new manager needs time. The board need to have patience as well as the fans. If he instills confidence and discipline, then he'll not be far off. The proof will be in the Appleton pudding. Well, what did you make of what George had to say, Nathan? Did he? I mean, he's probably given us a little bit of insight that we didn't all have before we heard from him, which I think is part of the reason why I thought it was important we have him on. What did you take from what George had to say that gave you some confidence?
Well, firstly, I think you should let a little one ask a question, because she obviously did want to ask a question. But but no, to be fair, I thought it was really good. I really enjoyed that. I think it's very good to get, obviously, with George's knowledge in the whole EFL, puts a bigger perspective of things. So naturally, what people do, which is fair enough, is when you look at managers, and I do it, you look at win percentages and you just see a number and a statistic. But what I found really interesting with George is putting a bit of meat, getting some meat around the bone on those statistics, like the Blackpool situation and the Pompey situation. And you think about it, you think, well, yeah, he's sort of on a hide into nothing in some way. So I thought it was really good an insight on that sort of thing as well. I think he said about how, the groups he had at Lincoln, it was a young squad. I don't know if it's very, very like for like on what we've got, but just the comparisons really. And yeah, he's had a lot of jobs. He's had a couple of jobs in difficult places, but I thought it was really insightful from George. I really enjoyed it. So and hopefully everyone obviously can see that as well and may sort of get that little bit of positivity back, because I think naturally at the time everyone was like, oh, but I don't know who everyone was expecting, but I'm happy with it. And like I said on Twitter numerous times, we win games. That's the main thing. But he's got a lot of work on his hands, but he knows that. But I don't think, as a couple of people said in the chat, it's not all the end of the world. It's not like the season ends next week and we've got a win to stay up. You know, we've got 40 games left.
Yeah, interesting. We're going to hear from our Stevenage guest, Ben, in a few moments' time. We've just got a couple of emails that came in during the week, just reacting to the arrival of Michael Appleton. Steve said, I must say I'm a bit underwhelmed regarding the Appleton appointment. I don't know what he's got that Dean Holden doesn't or didn't have. Sacking Dean was a big mistake. Of course, we will see what happens, but I'm not expecting a sudden upsurge in form. We are a bottom half squad. And that's it. And then Platty said, my view is that he is probably the most experienced manager who realistically would come here, and only Chris Powell, who clearly wouldn't have, would have been better. Give the guy a chance and see if he can turn a big potential into 3 points a game. A mate who's a Blackburn fan said he was liked by the players and supporters and did well, but the ownership ditched him. Sounds like us. Finally, support the side and let's get behind them. Bowyer's side was bang average pre-Christmas. Let's hope we can kick on. Come on, you Reds. That's from Platty. Cheers for getting involved, chaps. A couple of people talking about the best players of the season so far. Johan saying maybe Taylor, May, Jones, or Matt. Or he said Dobson. He means Stuart saying Dobson as well. We'll have that debate later on in the season, I guess, as it goes on. But I think it is time we start to look ahead to Saturday's trip up to the Lamex to take on Stevenage. Managed, of course, by that big geezer, Steve Evans. So let's get a view from the opposition on the show. Welcome to Ben Adshead from the Boro Pod. How you doing, Ben? Thanks for. I've got your name right there. How do you say your second name?
Yeah, Adshead or Adshead. Either or. I'll take that.
Nice.
Yeah,
Bit of flexibility. Yeah, no, we're really pleased to have you on. Stevenage, top of the league. You must be pretty pleased with how it's gone so far.
Yeah, surprised. I think it's probably the one word that I'd use with our league position. Obviously, we played a game more than most of the teams in the league. But yeah, pleasantly surprised, I'd say.
Yeah, what do you think has clicked so far this season? So obviously you come up with that momentum of getting out of League Two last season. You have got a manager who, I imagine, when he is your manager, he's the sort of bloke you love to love, and the same way we love to hate him. I mean, what's gone right so far this season? Yeah,
I think the main thing that I would say is we really kept the spine of the team that we had last season. You know, we lost a cut. I'm sure Charlton fans will be all too familiar with Alex Gilby, who we had on loan from the Addicks last season. He was a big part of that. I think him and another midfielder, Jake Reeves, who we lost. But other than that, we managed to keep the majority of our squad, which for a long period of the summer, I don't think we were sure if that was going to be the case. And then I think, massive credit to Evans and, the recruitment team at the club. The players they brought in have gelled in very quickly. I think on most Stevenage fans, there was a bit of a worry that we didn't have a target man going forward. Since then, we brought in Aaron Pressley, Kane Hemmings. They've sort of filled that role. And you've got players like Jamie Reid, who, in League Two season, took a while to find his feet, but he's on 4 goals this season in League One. I think that, you can't underestimate, that having a goal-scoring striker in this division, the difference that makes.
Dean Chapman in our chat says that Steve Evans looks like a coach driver, but he certainly looks like a manager who knows what he's doing. He seems to know how to motivate a squad minimum. He knows how to sort of play off opposition fans and managers and players. I mean, one of the most remarkable insights into how he operates was when we obviously had the games behind closed doors, and when I was covering those, you could actually hear what he was shouting to some of our players. Like, he knows how to get under your skin. I can't repeat what he called Adam Matthews once, although, to be fair, by the end of his time with the club, Charlton fans were calling Adam Matthews the same thing. But what is it about him that you think has sort of galvanised your team since he's come in?
I think that one thing that Stevenage fans sort of, when Evans came in, we were pretty much locked in a relegation battle at the bottom of League Two. It was between us and Oldham. We thought we had our third, I think it was our second game maybe under Evans, was Stevenage against Oldham, winner take, and lost 1-0. I think at that point we all thought, we're in trouble here. Like, we're going down to non-league. Evans, we gave him the time. He kept us up that year, and since then, I think it's the style of play is extremely different to most of the other teams, especially in this division. It's very direct. A lot of people would call it hoofball, but there's a method behind it, and it's a proven method at level. You only have to look at what he's done with the likes of Rotherham. For a period of time that he was at Gillingham, he was rather successful in League One on a similar budget, sort of relative to the rest of the league as to what he's on now. So I think it's just that experience, and that's something that in the previous appointments we didn't have. We didn't have that. We always took a gamble on, sort of younger managers taking their first jobs in the first, and it didn't quite pay off. But I think it's just that tried and tested method that Evans has brought to the club, which I think has really transformed us.
Hi, Ben. Just a quick one. Just going on to obviously knowing I like to look at ex-players. So I know obviously Jake Forster-Kaski's down there at the moment. I know he was sent off against Pompey, wasn't he? So I don't know is he suspended for tomorrow, and then on the back of that is how has he been? Because obviously he was quite a fan favourite here, and obviously he didn't get a contract here. So I would just want to see his thoughts as how he's settling in and how you all see him really.
Yeah, Jake's done a great job. I have to say, like, coming in last season, he had to play his way to that midfield because we had a very settled partnership in there. But every time he comes in, one thing that he really added, especially last season, was a bit more technical ability in the midfield, which is something that you don't associate with many of the midfielders that we had in that last season. And as you touched on the red card, to this day, I still don't think many of us actually know what happened for that red card. It was just an off-the-ball incident with a Portsmouth player. Both of them shook hands, both of them got sent off. It was really bizarre. I think he's probably available on Saturday. Whether he starts or not, I don't think so. We've got Finley Burns, who's a centre-back by trade, has stepped into midfield, done a great job. Louis Thompson, really experienced League One player, been excellent so far this season, especially like breaking up the play. So I think if he's available, he'll be in the squad. I'd be surprised to see him start, but yeah, he's still doing really nicely, actually, to be fair.
Hi, Benny. So, just a quickie, like we're struggling horrendously with our set plays this season, and that's clearly one of your strengths. I mean, if we look at the goals that you've scored and how you're sort of breaking the other teams up, would you say that like your set pieces is more of the way in as opposed to like scoring from open play?
That's a great question. It's no secret. You look at that Stevenage team. There is a lot of very physical players in that team. Our centre back Carl Piergiani has scored. I think he scored 8 goals in League Two last season. All of them come corners. He's a real threat. But I'd say this season, actually, I've been a lot more encouraged by play outside of just having to hoof balls into the box and hoping that someone will get on the end of it. I'd say a lot of it, if you can limit Jordan Roberts, who is he plays in a bit of a 3-10 role behind 2 strikers. If you can limit him, then that'll go a long way to probably dealing with most of the threats that we cause. But yeah, I mean, corners is funny. Even you look at a team like us. I highlight every week even with us, we're not great at defending corners. I'm watching a lot of the teams in League One. I actually don't think there's many teams that are that great with dealing with them. So yeah, it's always a threat, but I do think that, especially in comparison to last season, Stevenage carry a lot more threats sort of on the ball, and we're not so reliant on set pieces this year, I don't think.
Fantastic. Look, Ben, that was a really good insight into how Stevenage have been so far this season. Thank you for joining us on Charlton Live, and well, hopefully we'll bump into you over the weekend. If not, we'll speak again later on in the season.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for having me on, guys. Yeah, have a good day on Saturday.
Cheers. There we go. That's Ben from the Boro Pod, who joined us here on Charlton Live to give us the lowdown on Steve Evans' side. That was really, really insightful. So yeah, thanks to him. Ryan Clark, our resident Barnsley fan, who always joins us, reckons that Charlton are going to win 4-1 on Saturday. I look at I'd love that if that would be the case. Finchy saying hopefully Charlton win. There's nothing better than seeing the Pie Man lose it. There is a little bit of history between Micky Apples and the Pie Man. There's a great picture of him in his Lincoln tracksuit having a proper little finger point at Steve Evans from a game a couple of seasons ago. So hopefully that could be reignited. I think you might even mention that in the clip we're about to hear, because let's hear from Michael Appleton looking ahead to the trip to the Lamex Stadium.
Saturday will be to take on Steve Evans' Stevenage side. They're at the top of the table, and only one league defeat in 7. They had the best home record in League 2 last season. So it's going to be a tough start, obviously, for you, but you obviously want to be going there positive.
100%. Yeah, I mean, listen, I've got the utmost respect for Steve. We've had a few run-ins in our times. He'll probably tell you that as well. And they've been quite fun and emotional at times. But look, he gets the best out of the group that he tends to work with, and they have a certain way of doing it, and they do it really well. They've got a bit of quality in the group as well, and I think that's important to note that. It's not just obviously looking to get the ball forward quickly and early and trying to look for seconds and percentages, but there's a bit of quality in the group, and if there wasn't, they wouldn't be sort of sitting where they are in the table at this moment in time. So we respect that, we understand it, we know it's going to be difficult. I believe it's going to be a sellout. I know we've sold all our tickets, which is absolutely fantastic. We're going to need that support, because like you've said, they've got a great home record, and they've got that for a reason. So listen, we're going there. I'm hoping that the players, new manager in place, etc., gives them that extra little boost that we might need to go and beat a side that are flying at the top of the league.
As you said, sell out Charlton allocation in the away end. You went and had a look at Stevenage Saturday. Hopefully they'll see that you've picked up a few pointers to bring them home happy, send them home happy.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, listen, it'll make a sort of big difference from the game I watched at the weekend, and that's not being disrespectful to Carlisle, because I know the distance that they would have had to cover, but it looked a little bit empty behind that goal on Saturday. Well, it certainly won't be this week, and I think obviously myself and the rest of the group are really looking forward to it.
There we go. That's your headline. Micky Apples slams Carlisle travelling support. Yeah, I mean, sell out. We're travelling there in numbers. Like, the fans have done their bit. It is a horrible start for us, Nath. And, as Sue mentioned just then when we were speaking to Ben, it's set pieces in particular. Obviously, they have their threats. It's not purely set pieces, but, that's certainly something that you think in the space of a couple of, they've had a clear week on the training ground, albeit without 2 defenders who are obviously off on international duty. But that's certainly something he could try and tighten up in these opening few days. So that would be interesting to see if he's had any immediate effect on that department.
Yeah, you'd like to see some improvement, but I mean, I think we've had that issue for seasons now, and I think even Steve Brown's talked about it on Charlton TV before. And what we seem to lack is that leadership and the communication piece of our defending set plays. They're not all bad players. You don't become a bad player overnight. We don't have 4 Jack Paynes defending our box for corners. We've got big lads there. It's just a case of knowing where to be, where to go, communicate, and it's just practice. Set pieces are a massive part of the game in any level. And it's interesting that they're not very good at defending them, because we never score from one, really. So it could be interesting if we score from one now. Maybe we're just going against teams who are unreal defensively. But it's a massive part of the game, and he's not going to be able to turn it overnight. You know, I mean, by all means, if we can have another repeat of when the last time I went to this place, we won 8-0 when Toby Stevenson scored a hat trick. If that could happen, I know I was on comms that day, and that was the worst commentary sort of gig that's ever happened, because it was just like me just shouting, "I'll give it to Toby" for like 10 minutes. But it's 8, and it's great, wasn't it? I think the vote was. But no, if we can, it's not. I'm not expecting an 8-0 again, mate. But it's going to.
I'll take it though. I'll take it.
I mean, I wouldn't grumble at, I wouldn't grumble at an 8-0 lead, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that was one of my favourite nights supporting Charlton, because we went there with just, obviously it's an EFL trophy game. You just go there with no expectations. Some bloke you've never heard of gets a hat trick on his debut, and we get our largest win ever. I mean, that would be nice too. Finch is saying it'd probably be easier to go through the names of managers who've not had a run in with Steve Evans, which is true. I mean, it'd be interesting to see how Michael decides to almost announce his arrival with the Charlton fans, because one thing I've heard from a couple of sets of supporters, not necessarily like Oxford where he did really well, is that he's not a massive one for mixing with the fans and playing up to the crowd or anything, which sometimes you get managers who go completely the other way, and we've just had one. Obviously Dean made that a priority, but it'll be interesting to see exactly what sort of relationship he wants to have with the crowd, or if he's just going to get his head down and stick to business. And we might learn that on Saturday. If he goes up and nuts Steve Evans just to win a few people over, that might be a nice start.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, like we love a manager that will sort of get involved with the fans, but at the same time, does it really matter? As long as he's doing the job and he's doing well with the team. I think I've watched him over the years on like the EFL show and stuff, and he does seem like, although he looks quite frightening, and he talks really well, he does seem to be that type of guy that he's a little bit more private and maybe a bit shyer, that he's not going to be so kind of in your face and like in sort of getting the crowd rolled up and all of that sort of stuff. But I would absolutely love it if he was to nut Steve Evans. I had to run in with him once as well, so it ain't just managers.
Oh, tell us, Sue. Oh, we got to hear this.
So when I used to look after the mascots, I can't even remember who he was manager of at the time. But when I was looking after the mascots, the kids, and if we had an away mascot, they would obviously go in the away dressing room, but I would have to go with them because of the child protection procedures. The team who he was working for at the time, they had a female kit lady as well. So she wasn't allowed in the dressing room while the team were in there. And then when I then said, right, you've got a mascot, I need to take him in there, he was like, well, you're not going in there. And I was like, well, I have to. Like, it's child protection procedures. You can't let a child go into a dressing room with all these men, most of them in their underpants, without an adult that's got a DBS check. And we just stood having an argument in the tunnel, and he absolutely flat refused to let me go in there.
Oh, there you go. Well, I held him in such high regard before I heard that story as well. But yeah, Dean saying that Steve Evans has never been the same again since arguing with Steve. Maybe he has mellowed down a little bit since then. He sort of he knows when to pick his battles now. Harry says odds on Appleton nutting Evans, is it 2-1? Well, I don't know. Sue's going to join the queue if he does afterwards. Harry also says hopefully there'll be no players holding their hands up after the game of 3 points. Appleton will get a good reception at the Valley. You can guarantee that because he is the Charlton manager. That will be what happens. Team news didn't give a great deal away in terms of the players that we've had injured. I mean, Richard asked him during the week, and again, it was sort of, I don't know about this and that with the likes of Pan and Fraser, but Richard put in his piece, rumours end of September, so it's still another 2-3 weeks away before they're out there. The club just don't give away anything on injuries at the moment, so we don't really know where we stand. But I'm looking at that lineup of players who didn't play from the off against Fleetwood, so I'm guessing hopefully Miles will be fit enough to start. What sort of formation is Micky Apples actually going to play as well, Nave? That's going to be interesting because we spoke about different shapes he's utilised throughout his career Joe done a good bit of research for us on the emergency pod. But yeah, looking at the squad we have, he'll have to decide whether he goes with one of his tried and tested formations or is there one that suits us that he hasn't tried yet. I mean, which way do you think he'll be tempted to lean? Because I can't see a world where you don't get May and Leeburn on the pitch together, ideally as a front two, although they worked okay as a free late on against Fleetwood, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's a hard one, really, because I mean, originally I was thinking I wouldn't surprise me if Leeburn starts on the bench, still coming back, and, you know, May's playing, because I don't think to get the best out of Corey, I think he's on that left-hand side or right-hand side in a free. I think putting him on the left or right of a 4 in a 4-4-2, you could, but again, it's a lot of work. But then you flip it, if they're good at set plays and they're big, aggressive, physical side, you're going to need Miles's height in there. So it may mean that Miles may start a bit wider. I don't know. Or Alfie can go on a wider from the left like he done for Cheltenham a few times. But I think the key is if they're very good at set plays, the worst thing you're going to do is want a load of smaller players. I was going to say people there for some reason. Smaller players. So I think it needs some height in there. So I'd envisage you'll probably start the likes of Leeburn in there as well. And it wouldn't surprise me if Heck comes in. It really wouldn't. But yeah, it's going to be interesting because we don't really know. It's all a bit all or nothing. You'd hate it as a Stevenage scout, wouldn't you? Because you would have no idea what you're going to do. So, yeah. But you know, like if Chucks and Pan and Scott ain't going to play, then you can probably pick the midfield itself, the free, if he's going to play a free. So yeah. I don't really know, mate, to be honest.
Yeah, all hell let loose is asking if we're going to see Apples in the Oak post game, maybe in a cider. Love to the Fool says Apples, the core of his team will be vital. Oh, I think we've got a little one going here. Dudley, if Apples nuts Evans as he goes down, will that be an Apple turnover? Brilliant. Well, that's the tone set for the rest of the season now, isn't it? Joseph, I haven't warmed to Appleton at all. I think he sees fans as a pain in the backside and has contempt for us for having an opinion. It's a job for him. It's football for us. Well, we'll see how he sort of grows into the role, I guess, over the course of the next few weeks, judging by how often we keep managers, but hopefully the next few months, next few years, if all goes well, which is what we all want for him and for the club. So I mean, if we don't win Saturday, it's not the end. Like it's not the end of his time in SC7, but it would be great if he could get off. If he could get off to a good start, it's what everybody needs. You know, we all know that Exeter were top of the division last week. They lost at home to Leyton Orient. We're not going into the Burnabout here. We're going away to Stevenage. This is a winnable game, and it'll be great to start for Micky Apples with all 3 points.
Yeah, I mean, it would absolutely be amazing if we got all 3 points, especially the team at the top of the table. Wiping that smug look off of Evans's face would just be the cherry on top of
waving a DBS check in his face.
Yeah, but no, seriously, I think especially with our following, we do tend to do better against better sides from sort of past experience. But yeah, I mean, even a point, mate, that would just give us a lift. We haven't lost another game. So yeah, I think anything but a loss Saturday is just going to be amazing.
I mean, David said, I'd be happy with a draw on Saturday. The team needs to learn to walk before they can think about running again. And there's certainly a lot of walking to be done between now and the end of the season. And hopefully we will start running at some point, especially in defence, because we haven't done enough of that at times this season. Right, we've run out of time on this week's big match preview. Thanks to everyone who's joined us live on YouTube or caught up via the podcast afterwards. Massive thanks to Ben, who joined us from Boro Pod earlier, and of course George Elek from the Not the Top 20 Pod for giving us his insight on our new head coach. As always, Nathan and Sue, try not to get into any arguments with any more football managers between now and the weekend, but great to speak to the pair of you.
Thanks, boys. It's been fun.
Hopefully we can go there and upset the apple cart.
Hey, there we go. Back on track. Get some more of those out for Sunday now. If I'm loving that, excellent stuff. Right, don't forget we will be back on Sunday morning, 10 o'clock on YouTube to look back at the game with Stevenage. Hopefully, we will be talking about a tasty 3 points for the Apple Man. But yeah, all it is left to say tonight is thank you for listening to Charlton Live, sponsored by the British Institute of Kitchen, Bedroom, and Bathroom Installation. I'm Louis Mendez. We shall see you again on Sunday.